Balder's Dream. As it was so natural for Balder the Beautiful to be smiling and happy, the gods were greatly troubled when on a day they began to notice a change in his bearing. Gradually the light died out of his blue eyes, a careworn look came onto his face, and his step grew heavy and slow. Odin and Frigga, seeing their beloved son's evident depression, tenderly implored him to reveal the cause of his silent grief. Balder, yielding at last to their anxious entreaties, confessed that his slumbers, instead of being peaceful and restful as of yore, had been strangely troubled of late by dark and oppressive dreams, which, although he could not clearly remember them when he awoke, constantly haunted him with a vague feeling of fear. To that god his slumber was most afflicting, his auspicious dreams seemed departed. Lea Vegtam, Thorpe's translation. When Odin and Frigga heard this, they were very uneasy, but declared that nothing would harm their universally beloved son. Nevertheless, when the anxious parents further talked the matter over, they confessed that they also were oppressed by strange forebodings. And, coming at last to believe that Balder's life was really threatened, they proceeded to take measures to avert the danger. Frigga sent her servants in every direction, with strict charge to prevail upon all living creatures, all plants, metals, stones, in fact every animate and inanimate thing, to register a solemn vow not to harm Balder. All creation readily took the oath, for there is nothing on earth which did not love the radiant god. So the servants returned to Frigga, telling her that all had been duly sworn save the mistletoe, growing upon the oak stem at the gate of Valhalla. And this, they added, was such a puny, inoffensive thing that no harm could be feared from it. On a course they resolved that they would send to every being assurance to solicit Balder not to harm. All species swore oaths to spare him. Frigg received all their vows and compacts. Seaman Zeta, Thorpe's translation. Frigga now resumed her spinning in great content, for she felt assured that no harm could come to the child she loved above all. The Vala's prophecy. Odin, in the meantime, had resolved to consult one of the dead Vala or prophetesses. Mounted upon his 8-footed steed, Sleipnir, he rode over the tremulous bridge Bifrost, and over the weary road which leads to Gjallar, and the entrance of Niflheim, where, passing through the Hell Gate, and by the dog Garm, he penetrated into Hell's dark abode. Uprose the king of men with speed, and saddled straight his coal-black steed. Down the yawning steep he rode that leads to Hela's drear abode. Descent of Odin by Gray. Odin saw to his surprise that a feast was being spread in this dark realm, and that the couches had been covered with tapestry and rings of gold, as if some highly honored guest were expected. But he hurried on without pausing, until he reached the spot where the Vala had rested undisturbed for many a year, when he began solemnly to chant a magic spell, and to trace the runes which had the power of raising the dead. Thrice pronounced in accents dread the thrilling verse that wakes the dead, till from out the hollow ground slowly breathed a sullen sound. Descent of Odin by Gray. Suddenly the tomb opened, and the prophetess slowly rose, inquiring who had dared thus to trouble her long rest. Odin, not wishing her to know that he was the mighty father of the gods and men, replied that he was Vegtam, god of Valtem, and that he had awakened her to inquire for whom Hel was spreading her couches and preparing a festive meal. In hollow tones, the prophetess confirmed all of his fears by telling him that the expected guest was Balder, who was destined to be slain by Hodr, his brother, the blind god of darkness. Hodr will hither his glorious brother send, he of Balder will the slayer be, and Odin's son of life bereave. By compulsion I have spoken, now I will be silent. Seaman Zeta, Thorpe's translation. Despite the Vala's evident reluctance to speak further, Odin was not yet satisfied, and he prevailed upon her to tell him who would avenge the murdered god and call his slayer to account. For revenge and retaliation were considered as a sacred duty by the peoples of the north. Then the prophetess told him, as Rosstheolf had already predicted, that Rinda, the earth goddess, would bear a son to Odin, and that Vali, as this child would be named, would neither wash his face nor comb his hair until he had avenged upon Hodor the death of Balder. In the caverns of the west, by Odin's fierce embrace compressed, a wondrous boy shall Rinda bear, who ne'er shall comb his raven hair, nor wash his visage in the stream, nor see the sun's departing beam, till he on Hodor's corpse shall smile, flaming on the funeral pile. Descent of Odin by Gray. When the reluctant Vala had thus spoken, Odin next asked, who would refuse to weep at Balder's death? The innocuous question showed a knowledge of the future which no mortal could possess, and immediately revealed to the Vala the identity of her visitor. Therefore, refusing to speak another word, she sank back into the silence of the tomb, declaring that none would be able to lure her out again until the end of the world was come. Hie thee hence and boast at home that never shall inquire come to break my iron sleep again till Lok has burst his tenfold chain, ne'er till substantial night has resumed her ancient right, till wrapped in flames in ruin hurled sinks the fabric of the world. Descent of Odin by Gray. Odin, having learned the decrees of Orlog, or fate, which he knew could not be set aside, now remounted his steed and sadly wended his way back to Asgard, thinking of the time, not far distant, when his beloved son would no more be seen in the heavenly abodes, and when the light of his presence would have vanished forever. On entering Gladsheim, however, Odin was somewhat reassured by the intelligence, promptly conveyed to him by Frigga, that all things under the sun had promised that they would not harm Balder, and feeling convinced that if nothing would slay their beloved son, he must surely continue to gladden gods and men with his presence, he cast care aside and resigned himself to the pleasures of the festive board. So those were Balder's Dream and the Vala's Prophecy, the second and third sections of Chapter 21 of Myths of the Norsemen by Helene A Guerber, Balder. I will be working my way through this book section by section, and if there are any other public domain books that you would like for me to read, please leave a comment below. Did you enjoy this video? Then subscribe for more, and be sure to check me out on Facebook, Twitter, and Patreon. Thank you for listening, and have a lovely evening.